tax-deductible donation and join the fight today. Thank you.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Hello, I'm Dr. Mike Carucci.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening. You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
And welcome, my fellow patriots, to another edition of On Point with Victor. As always, thanks so much for you guys tuning in. We can't do this without you, and you are tuned into America's Web Radio. This is On Point with Victor. I am Victor Armendariz, and if you want me to spell that for you guys, it's easy. It's ARMENDARIZ. As always, you can find us on Facebook, America's Web Radio. You can find us on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. And like I always say, because I know I have some Democrats out there that listen every week, you can join in on this discussion. We are live right now on Facebook Live. If you go to America's Web Radio Facebook page, you can also find us on YouTube. And if you want to email me later, because if you're not brave enough to ask questions now, it's all right. I understand. Some of you guys still live in your cry closets. But don't worry. You can email me at victor@americaswebradio.com, victor@americaswebradio.com. So we've got a lot to get to today. There is so much. You know, it just seems like every weekend that goes by, I get in here and get behind this microphone on Tuesdays, and I come in and I have this whole thing in my head on what I'm going to go point by point. But then all these things happen, and all that goes out the window. There's just so much going on. So I had a great show planned, a great opening planned. And what happens on my way to the station? We get breaking news that Bolton is out. I'm not going to make a big stink about this, folks, because we don't exactly know what happened yet. But there was no secret that Trump and Bolton were going to disagree. Folks, do not pay attention and get sucked into the lamestream media, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC. They're going to go round the clock trying to make a big stink out of this. Suddenly, the media is going to go from hating John Bolton's guts. And if you don't believe me, look up past news stories back in the Bush years. They have hated John Bolton forever. And now they're going to treat John Bolton like he's the greatest thing. They're going to treat him like he's the second coming. And don't fall into this mess. If you go back when Donald Trump, whether you agree with him or not, he ran for president not being for what people call endless wars and what he referred to as endless wars. I'm not going to sit here and take sides because I could just get into a whole couple of hours of making the show about whether we should be in some part of the country or not, whether we should still be in Germany, whether we should still be in Japan, whether we should still be in parts of Eastern Europe. I'm not going to get into that discussion. But listening to Donald Trump when he ran as a candidate, he made it clear that he didn't want to get bogged down in Iraq. He didn't want to be bogged down in Afghanistan. He was never for the Iraq war. You know, folks, back before Donald Trump decided to run for president, he used to be a Democrat, and he was loved by the Al Sharptons and the Jesse Jacksons and the Pelosi's and the Schumers. Schumer loved Donald Trump. But you run as a Republican, and they'll hate you and act like they've never known you and never have enjoyed a round of golf, let's just say, at one of his clubs. But my point is that Donald Trump has made no bones about it. Way before he even ran for president, he was speaking out against the Iraq war and wars like that. And as president, it should be no surprise to anyone that he has had disagreements with Bolton. I commend President Trump for having Bolton around him for as long as he did, because if there's one thing Donald Trump knows how to do, it's surround himself with very smart people on both sides of the issue. And he should be commended for that. But probably what happened here is John Bolton finally, there's some disagreements that were going on. That was no big surprise. And my guess, if I had to make a prediction, was Bolton probably didn't like the fact that there were people in the White House trying to allow the Taliban leadership or Taliban so-called leadership to visit Camp David. Look, that would have been a horrible and really dumb idea, and I'm glad Trump canceled that, but I got a feeling Bolton just doesn't want to deal with those people anymore, and hey, who can blame him? But anyway, don't let this bog you down. The truth will come out at some point, and my guess is they just had disagreements, and Bolton wants to move on. Hey, look, Bolton's going to make a lot more money in the private sector. So let me get that out of the way. And just so you guys, coming up today, because I'm going to get off of some tangents, and if I don't stop myself, then this show is going to it's just going to go by because it goes by so fast. So while I've got your attention, we will have coming up here really soon, and those of you watching live, you're probably going, who is this guy sitting next to the host? But we're going to get to that in just a few, but we're going to get into a discussion about District 7. And those of you in Georgia, and for those of you outside of Georgia, we're going to make this conversation interesting. And in fact, let me tell you, for those of you outside of Georgia, we are going to talk about a district race here in Georgia, but don't think that doesn't apply to you. Every representative that sits in Washington, D.C. is making up what I like to refer to, and President Trump refers to it as the Washington Swamp. No offense. But what I mean by that is, no matter what state you're in, there are representatives of other states that are going to be making decisions that are going to have ramifications on the country. So you're going to want to tune in. You're going to want to hear what my guest Mark has to say, because this race here in District 7 is probably going to be indicative of a lot of races around the country. So you're really going to want to stay tuned here. So we're going to get to that in just a second. But I want to I want to mention a couple of things. One of the, all right, I'm going to say this, and some of you are out there are going to roll your eyes. This is going to be my things that you won't hear in the media segment. There's some news that came out, and you can go verify this at the Washington Standard. Just go to look up the Washington Standard and they've got an article in there. The lead detective on the Epstein case. This guy was at the ripe old age of 50 years old and died of a brief illness, and I'm quote unquote or air quotes brief illness. Lead investor for the Epstein case dies at the age of 50, and they label it as a brief illness. Now I ask you, have you heard anything about this? This story has been pretty much buried, and it's been buried because he died last June. So I'm not going to start any conspiracies here, but you know how I am here at On Point with Victor. I'm all about common sense and logic, and when something doesn't smell right, there ought to be some people looking into it, and I know there's some investigations going on. So just think about that for a little bit. The little lead investigator, brief illness, just makes you go, The other thing I want to mention real quick is I'm sure most of you saw the 7-hour climate discussion that CNN decided to have. I have a question and I have a request. If we're going to spend 7 hours talking about a hoax, yes, I said it, folks, a hoax, because this whole climate change, global warming, whatever you want to call it today, it is a hoax. It's one of the biggest hoax perpetrated on the American people to make libtards and liberals and socialists rich. That's what this is. It's a scheme to get rich that's being put on by the left, and some establishment Republicans fall right in line to it as well. But I have a request to CNN and even Fox News and any other news agency. Can we have a 7-hour discussion on the $22 trillion debt? Can we have a discussion? I will take an hour. It doesn't have to be 7 hours. I'll take 1 hour prime time discussion of the $22 trillion debt that we're facing right now and digging deeper every day, and the $6 trillion or so deficit that we're running. Let's have a discussion about that. I'm just going to leave it right there, folks, but we've got to have that discussion. It's just amazing to me that we can sit around and talk about something that okay, look, first of all, we have changes of season, so there's always been climate change, and there always will be. But to make a 7-hour discussion on science that people are getting paid to come up with a hypothesis, they're getting paid to come up with these doom and gloom scenarios, none of which have come true. If you want to get down to the bare knuckles, and like I said, this is common sense here with On Point with Victor. There's logic here. There's not hysteria, and I don't make decisions based on emotions. So if you follow the logic road, if you follow the common sense, and you follow this whole discussion on climate change, look, AOC, Alexandria Occasional Cortez, when she came out and said, we have 12 years or we're done, 12 years, we're not going to be alive on this planet. 12 years, the planet's going to implode. Well, Al Gore stood up waving his hand and said, look, I've been saying we've had 10 years for the past 30 years. So follow what happens. None of the predictions that Al Gore or any of these other people have been saying since the 80s and 90s have come true. None of them have come true. And you can verify that. But what has happened, look at the money. Follow the money. Look how wealthy Al Gore has become on this climate. That's a good, you know what? That's a Freudian slip. We'll call it climate change. So that's what I want you guys to just think about out there. When people get in your face or start debating you on climate change and global warming, take them back to history. Make them give you an example of something that's come true. Because none of those predictions have come true. And then talk to them about money. And then ask them this simple question. Here again I go. I cannot help the logic. Ask them why the Obamas, the Pelosi's, the Schumers, and the Hollywood left are buying multi-million-dollar beachfront coastal properties. Why are they buying those properties? It's the very areas that they're telling you and me that aren't going to exist in 10 years. So would you invest millions of dollars to an area that you're telling everyone that is not going to exist? No. So as I've said before, watch the actions of these people. Don't listen to their words. Watch the actions. So if you're hysterically afraid that California is going to fall off into the ocean in 10 years, you wouldn't be spending millions of dollars to make sure you've got a front row seat when the water levels are coming up to your windows. So again, folks, it's common sense, it's logic. We've got to bring that back into the discussion. So before we go to our break here, I want to go ahead and switch gears here. I know some of you are out there going, man, Victor, you're all over the place. Well, look, On Point with Victor sometimes goes really fast because, I got to make sure you listeners stay awake. Look, we've got some elections coming up. 2020 is going to be a crazy, crazy, crazy year. So I am going to introduce my guest here today. He is running for 7th District, United States Congress.
Yes.
And this is Mark, and is it Gonsalves?
Pretty darn good. I was wondering how you would handle that. You said it very nicely. It's pronounced Gonsalves.
Gonsalves.
Yeah,
Excellent. So what's the background of that?
Portuguese.
Portuguese.
Yeah, so my grandparents came through Ellis Island, right, back in the day when you used to get the quarantine and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Grew up in a coastal town of Massachusetts, which had a lot of Portuguese immigrants there at that time, mostly factory workers. My grandparents worked in a factory, as a matter of fact, and my father ended up at the Naval Academy. So he lived the American dream.
Wow.
Unfortunately for him, his parents passed away while he was in school. His mother was the second to pass, and she passed away a week before he graduated the Naval Academy. And it was literally something that bothered him for the rest of his life, that she didn't get to see that culmination, if you will, of that achievement, right? Yeah. And
that's a huge achievement.
It was.
Huge achievement. So wow, so your family came over. They came over the right way, and they came over the hard way.
That's true.
And they probably assimilated and did what my father did and what a lot of families here, and why I always refer to how open the United States, how welcoming the United States. Look, folks, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for the graciousness of this country. Okay, we're going to go to our first break, Mark. But when we come back, we're going to get into, I want to get right into why you're running, and I want to get into some issues, and I want to talk about District 7 and where it is and what it covers and all of those things. So, folks, you hang on right there. We will be right back. You are listening to On Point with Victor. This is America's Web Radio.
Let's do it.
Perhaps you are struggling to cope with the disease of addiction. If not, you probably know a family member or friend that needs help in battling the cravings and the personal and professional damage done by the effects of drugs or alcohol. Get a pen and paper and be ready to write down the following. These are the issues that the trained staff at the Atlanta Healing Center address and treat every day. Their doctors and counselors with over 40 years of practice in the field of addiction can treat the suffering individual in a thoughtful, compassionate, and experienced manner and guide him or her along the path to recovery. So call 770-696-9862 and speak to a knowledgeable staff member about how you or your loved one can be helped to enjoy a better and healthier life. More information is also available on the website at www.atlantahealingcenter.com.
Whether cruising the strip in a 57 Chevy or taking the family on a vacation in a 71 Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser, you need to tune in to Classic Cars with Steve Ronaldo and Jim Weber every Saturday from 8 to 9 a.m. on americaswebradio.com.
Hi, this is Steve Ronaldo, host of the Classic Car Show on America's Web Radio. Just talking to you about antique car insurance. I think that if you're looking for the best coverage for your classic car, consider J.C. Taylor Insurance. They've been my insurer for years in this hobby and have the top rating of all of the insurance companies in the hobby. When you get ready for insurance, call J.C. Taylor or visit jctaylor.com on the internet.
The Docs for Patient Care Foundation is your way to join the fight and become a member of an organization created by doctors for patients, dedicated to fighting for your health care freedom and preserving the doctor-patient relationship. Get a pen and paper. Write down docs4patientcarefoundation.org. That's DOCS, the number 4, patientcarefoundation.org. Go to our site and please make a generous tax-deductible donation and join the fight today. Thank you.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Listening to On Point with Victor. I am Victor Armendariz. All right, we're talking to Mark. And Mark, say your last name again.
It's pronounced Gonsalves.
Gonsalves. And so, are you friends with Ronaldo? I have a lot of soccer fans that listen to the show.
Yeah, that's very good. I know. Hey, we have the World Cup coming our way.
Yes,
right?
we do. We've got 20. Yeah.
That's big news.
Oh, it's going to be phenomenal.
Impact.
Oh, it's going to be great as long as we don't elect some crazy Democrats to. Let's see. We have to keep Ossoff away from the Senate. We have to keep Abrams away from the governorship.
Right.
And we've got to keep whoever the Democrat is that might be running against you, keep them away.
Right.
But speaking of that, so you are running for District 7, and this is a pretty big district in the state of Georgia. Anyone familiar with Georgia, this is Gwinnett County. This is some of
Forsyth
County.
Those are the two. And
that's those are huge counties. And this is going to be a very important seat. It's currently occupied Rob Woodall. By Rob Woodall and John Linder before him.
That's correct.
And I could sit here and say a few things.
Go ahead, Victor. It's your show.
Yeah, I should. I try to be nice on my show. I really do. You know, there are a few things that Rob Woodall that I am not sad that he's retiring. Mm-hmm. I am a huge, and I'll get into this later, a huge fair tax proponent.
Yeah, and I will speak to that point as well.
Oh, good.
We will get
to it. No one can come on the show without discussing the consumption tax with me. It is a near and dear to my heart, and I have a problem. I've always had a problem with Woodall because I'll always thank him for continuing the discussion when he was first elected.
Yes.
And the books that he co-authored. But he really, really, in my opinion, turned into an establishment guy and does not champion that idea anymore. But we'll get to that. So he's retiring. I wish him the best. But now we're in a situation where Gwinnett County in 2018 took a hit, mm-hmm. and the GOP fell to me, really, really, let's just say fell on their laurels. Really didn't come together. Really just kind of sat back and let the Democrats make the inroads that they've made mm-hmm. into Gwinnett County, which has traditionally been a pretty strong red area or Republican area. So what's driving you to jump into this race? Let me start there, and then tell me what you see happening right now in District 7.
Sure. So you mentioned the swamp. the best part is I'm a complete outsider to this. My background in education, I have a degree in accounting.
Okay.
Pursued business, had some big wins along the way, and got punched in the chin a couple of times as well, and that's very humbling, and great learnings come from that. It's very simple. I have an only child. She's 19. She's in college today, her second year. And I watched what happened at the beginning of this year, right, when 116th Congress took their oaths of office, and literally within a couple of days, this is what I observed. The Green New Deal, another $93 trillion on top of $22 trillion.
And,
right?
we all know if they're saying 93, it'll be double that.
Well, that's a very good point. You know, Massachusetts, we had the big dig. We know how things escalate, right?
I am very familiar with the big dig.
So that was number one. Then I watched the New York State Legislature vote in late and two-term abortion. They're all on the State House steps clapping away like they just won the state lottery. They lit up the financial building like it was a pink popsicle that night, remember?
Yep. They were practically clapping for infanticide.
Well, that was the next day. That was the governor of Virginia that chimed in on that, talking about post-term abortion in the most chilling of terms, talking about keeping the babies comfortable, and that was the trigger point. And little did I know, the next day after that, I would watch him in the yearbook picture and admit to being in it, and then conveniently 24 hours later, he no longer was in it. And the thing that was amazing to me is he looked straight in the camera, and he said, I'm not going to resign because my state is in tremendous pain, and I'm a doctor. I know how to heal.
Wow.
And I'm thinking to myself, you may or may not know how to heal, but one thing's for sure, you have no self-awareness at all. And that was the trigger point. And, you know, I think there are many, many well-meaning Americans that look at Washington, feel like they're not serving the interests of the people, but don't want to engage because this is a very messy affair. Now it drags in your family. There's a lot of aspects of it that are very uncomfortable for someone that's not a political being. But if we don't start getting some people, and Donald Trump, let's face it, he paved the way, didn't he?
He really did.
The outsider.
And if people want to, you hit on a really good point, Mark. If people want to understand why the media, the left, and Hollywood, and even the tech giants and other companies, if you want to understand why they are going after Donald Trump so hard, it's because an outsider was never, ever supposed to make it to where Donald Trump has made it. Exactly. Washington is a club. The swamp is a club. Whether you're a Democrat or you're establishment Republican, you're pretty much, to me, one of the same. And they do have their club. They will on camera disagree and then go to their steak dinners at night. They do not live like the rest of the world. That bubble is strictly over D.C., but they're going after Donald J. Trump because they're sending out a warning shot to anyone else who's an outsider saying, don't you try this. And that,
it's a very
Mark,
good point, but that's why term limits need to be part of this discussion now.
That's absolutely true.
Right? The Founding Fathers, they did not envision, how I would describe it in public is I would simply say, politics should not be a career. It should be an objective.
Amen to that.
The objective is to get things fixed and to get things done in the service of the people. Then you pass the baton to the next person who has the same objective in mind. And if we started seeing that happen, manifest in Washington, D.C., I've got to tell you, all the things that we know are wrong would start to, over time, fall away. Because you would start voting your conscience when you knew that you were going to be leaving behind the baton for the next person anyway.
Well, Mark, that's a great point, because if you read the readings of Jefferson and Hamilton, just read the Founding Fathers, and I'm saying beyond the Constitution, read their writings, what led them to the Constitution, and you will see, specific to your point, there was never the intention of career politicians. It was always, hey, Mr. Farmer, Mr. Postman, Mr. Delivery Guy, Mr. Pizza Guy, whatever you were. Well, right, they probably did it, but the point was, from no matter what your job was, no matter where you were on the income scale, you go serve the people around you, or serve your constituents, serve your state, and then come back and hand that off to someone else. So if the Founding Fathers knew how many lawyers and these career politicians were in Washington right now, they would be rolling over in their grave. But the Constitution, that's like I'm saying, to your point, it was never meant to have career politicians. And we need to, like you said, if we could get back, but see, Mark, if we got to that, what you were talking about, it's going to require the shrinking of the federal government and putting power to the states where it belongs.
Amen. That's what we're all fighting for. And you and I talked off camera here before we started today. And here's the thing. When you look at where we've come from with Congress, initially we were a country that had natural rights bestowed upon us from our Creator. Now we're a country of human rights. And I believe that was a watershed moment in our descent into the rabbit hole. That's what I believe.
Well, you're again, that's a perfect point, because once you take away that our rights are derived by a higher power, or our rights are naturally derived, and you replace that with human rights, then there has to be an entity to telling you what your rights can be, and that entity is going to be government every time.
Hey, when I get my physical money now from the bank or from the cashier, I look on the back to read "In God We Trust," because I expect at any moment it's going to now say "In Government We Trust." We're close.
We're probably close to that, and that's sad. Let's hope that never happens. So all right, Mark. So you're getting into this race now. How do you view? You know, we've got a lot of listeners out there, and we do actually have a lot of listeners in Gwinnett. Tell me where you see Gwinnett County. Where do you see Forsyth County? I mean,
sure. I think
what do we see for
Gwinnett has had the biggest demographical change since the last census, certainly. So the Hispanic community, the Asian community, and actually my wife is half Asian.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, her mother came over here legally, and she's an only child as well. Most people may not know that story in District 7, but that story needs to be told. Wow. And I have to tell you, my mother-in-law is a great woman. She still has the same pot that she arrived in America with, and it is so dented and beat up and so on, and she keeps it on the range. And when I first saw it, because this thing looked like it cost 50 cents, right? So I said to her, I said, "Mrs. Moore, what's the significance of that pot?" And she said, "It's the very first pot that I ever had in America. And it's a reminder, no matter how far I come in America, that's where I started."
That's where I started.
That's a heck of a story.
Wow. Well, Mark, these are the stories you're going to have to tell on the campaign trail.
I'm trying.
So as we look ahead, and voters are going to go, they're going to have a few choices. I mean, there's probably going to be 5 to 10 people in the primary. What's your number one issue? Let's start there.
I would say that there's 4 major issues that I would talk about in public given the limited amount of time. So it's debt, deficits, and spending. $22 trillion in debt, handing our next generation, my daughter and the grandchildren to follow that level of taxation, which is really what that is. So you could make a very compelling case that we're dropping $22 trillion onto their backs without their own representation. Taxation without representation.
Well, that point right there is something that we'll have to get into a little bit more. We're going to go to our next break here. Folks, stay tuned, because when I get back, since Mark brought up taxation, we'll talk about another issue, and then we'll get into maybe a little bit more in depth about some of the issues that really are going to be meaningful to District 7. So hang tight, folks. This is On Point with Victor. You're listening to America's Web Radio.
Quick Stakes, that's Q-U-I-K Stakes, are not just for surveyors. They are great for family and community gardens. Go online to www.quickstake.com or contact your local land surveying supply dealer and get you a box of Quick Stakes. You'll love them every year when you plant your garden. Again, that's Quick Stakes, Q-U-I-K Stakes, the truly preferred way to stake and identify what's in your garden now.
Get your pen and paper ready. If there's a move in your near future, I'm here to tell you that the folks I used and now recommend is Around Town Movers. Timothy and the guys recently moved me, and I am and was totally satisfied with a sometimes not so fun experience moving. Call Timothy at 770-378-4708 and make it a good move and a good experience. Around Town Movers for that local or cross-country move. Timothy, Around Town Movers, in my opinion, are the best. That's Around Town Movers. Call them.
45 years of experience is behind the most trusted name in auto transportation. Passport Transport, the first and finest today. That's why Passport Transport is the preferred auto transport for major auto manufacturers, concours, museums, tours, and collectors, and should be your choice from across the state to across the country. When you have the need, go to PassportTransport.com and enjoy the peace of mind referenced experience will give you. Passport Transport.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
And welcome back, folks. This is On Point with Victor. Look, this is a great conversation. And again, for those of you that are not in Georgia, stay tuned. Hop on. You can ask Mark a question too.
Please.
And I'm sure Mark will be happy to take questions, especially if you are in Georgia and you are in District 7. But if for some reason you guys can't do that now and can't engage, you can always go and catch this show as soon as this show we're done live. It will be on all the podcasts. This show will be on YouTube. You just search On Point with Victor, go to America's Web Radio page, subscribe to it. There are many ways to catch this. In fact, Mark, your campaign is more than welcome to repost this video.
Oh, thank you.
Because we do record, well, you can see it now. We are recording live over live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and other avenues. So I want to get right back into this. So you were talking about, one of the things I have such a problem with is, and I can tie this into two issues. When you talk about taxation without representation, and you look at the overwhelming and overbearing growth of the federal government can't do anything unless it seizes money from the people, the individual. The only people who pay taxes are the individual. So the federal government, in order to do any of its grandiose giveaways, our station owner mentioned off air the Santa Claus term. That's how people view our federal government. To me, I think the Democrats have become the Santa Claus party. We are no longer the land of the free. We are the land of the free stuff.
Well, and we talked again off camera about free. So my acronym on free.
Oh, this is good.
After watching the debates, right? Mm-hmm. How many times did we hear a Democrat running for president use the word free?
Free.
Mm-hmm. In their answers to the various questions. I don't know what the number is, but it had to be a three-digit number.
Had to be three
digits.
Had to be
a three-digit number. So it got me thinking, free. What could we create as an acronym that would register for folks?
And fit for the Socialist Democrat Party.
Proper perspective, right? Free, forcefully redistributing everyone's earnings. That's really what free is.
And that's what it is. And the sad part about it, Mark, is they probably said that word free. They offered something up for free at least 100 times plus. Mm-hmm. But you can count on one hand how many times they said the word freedom or liberty.
Right. And don't you find it ironic, right? We're watching what's going on in Hong Kong right now.
Mm-hmm.
And these people protesting on the streets of Hong Kong, waving American flags. Right? Waving American flags. Yeah. When we protest here, we wave communist flags.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Is that insane?
It's so backwards. We could do a whole nother show on these Antifa and these type of people who protest and wave the communist flag. They wave black flags, which to me, when I see a black flag, you might as well be waving an ISIS flag. It's sad, but we do have gotten things backwards in this country a little bit. But it's because, which is another thing, and I want to ask your opinion on education, and we'll get to that in a minute, because I don't believe we have. To me, there's no public school. It's a government school, and a government school is an indoctrination school, and that's why we're putting out these Antifa kids because of this education system that we have. But talking about the taxation without representation, we can also take that to health care.
I speak to health care very clearly because I've spent quite a number of years now in health and wellness. I own my own nutraceutical manufacturing
Oh, wow.
facility. So I've done a lot of homework in this area.
So the healthcare, so that's another big issue that's going to be on the table in 2020. And what I want people to understand is you go back, why do we have the situation we have now? Well, you can trace it all the way back to World War II when the government put a freeze on employers. So in order for them to compete and get the best people, they started paying for healthcare. And healthcare wasn't a taxable income. And then the government figured out, wow, if we can keep, I mean, it was just, it ended up being a control tactic, but this is where we got to where we are now, where the private sector is not leading the way.
Hey, and I give you credit for explaining that to your audience, because I talk to people in healthcare that don't even
know that. That's
which
sad.
is incredible to me.
Yeah.
So here we've taken virtually 20% of our economy and put it outside of the purview of America's exceptionalism, free market.
Free markets.
When I was a kid, by the way, it was 4% of GDP. Wow. That was a sustainable number, right? Now it's 18%, heading to 20%, and we're bankrupting families all over this country.
Yep.
So we will never fix our healthcare system until there is true pricing transparency in the healthcare marketplace. Once we do that, right? Sunlight's the best disinfectant.
Yeah.
Once we do that, free market goes to work. It creates competition. It drives prices down, and actually it improves the quality of our care. And that's another big myth, right? Most Americans think we enjoy the best health care in the world, and we're not even close anymore. Just look it up. Google America's ranking on the world stage with health care. You'll be shocked at what you see.
And Mark, when you talk about the ranking, our healthcare, you can go back 10, 20, 30 years to where we are now and measure that the fall we've made in healthcare and correlate it to the government intrusion, and they do it by regulation. But the more the government tries to take over healthcare, the more it falls. And what I mean by that, care gets worse. If government control goes up, care gets worse, costs go up. So who gets hurt? We the people, the patient, the run-of-the-mill, whether it's middle America, whether it's Joe construction worker or Joe line worker in Michigan, or the coal miner in West Virginia, it's hurting them the most.
Well, I just hope that Donald Trump, in one of his closing salvos, will actually say, make America healthy again. Nobody's touched on this. I just saw a number today. 20% of the Navy, right, close, dear to your heart.
Yes, it is.
Navy, overweight today in the Navy.
Wow.
That's insane.
That's
so
crazy.
we rely on health care because we've decided to not pay attention to our own health. We are the sickest nation on earth. We consume more pharmaceuticals. You know how many prescription drugs we take in America? Think about this. This number will blow your mind.
I'm afraid
we have,
to ask.
330 million Americans, give or take 20 million illegal immigrants maybe.
Right.
4.25 billion prescriptions are written in America every year. That's 13 prescriptions for every man, woman, and child.
Yeah.
Do you think that we have a prescription deficit in America?
There you go. No. It's sad and to hear numbers like that, because we are an exceptional nation.
I know.
And with the ingenuity that comes naturally with being Americans, with that yearning to be free and that yearning of liberty that naturally comes to an American, I'm afraid we're losing that, Mark.
Hey, that's why I'm fighting. The reality of it is it takes great courage to go against the establishment.
Very much
I was
so.
up in Washington a couple of weeks ago, and I have to tell you, the groups that I was with, the conservative groups, they wanted to know, would I vote my conscience? Would I do what's right? Would I follow the Constitution? And the answer is yes. And they looked me straight in the eye and they said, you know that's going to cost you politically. I said, I'm not here to play politics. I'm here to serve other people.
Yeah.
We are what, at the 11th hour, closing in on the 12th hour of America. I don't want to put my head on my pillow for the last time and say, you know what, I thought about it, I could have, I should have, and never did. That's what this is about for me. I want to be able to feel like I had a bigger part to play to get our ship righted. Using another Navy term.
Right.
You like that?
I like that. That's very good. You know, Mark, I mean, and it's so important because, like your grandparents, because you're fighting for Americans and you're fighting for America and you're fighting for the ability for people who come here like your grandparents did. I fight because of the way my father came here and the way this country welcomed legal immigrants.
Correct.
Because,
we would all agree, right, Victor? We would all agree that immigration has helped fuel our economic engine.
Without a doubt.
Help make us a vibrant, prosperous country.
Yeah.
But we alone should decide who comes into our country and who does not. Absent secure borders, we're no longer a sovereign nation.
You cannot be a sovereign nation without a secure border. And I'm glad we transitioned to that because immigration is another hot topic. And 2020 is going to be a big, big topic. And you're absolutely right. This border argument or border debate isn't just about we're meanies and we want to put up a wall. It's about security. It's about sovereignty. There is a great saying that I borrowed, and I borrow on this show, and I borrow it from another radio host. He's an awesome guy, and he will often say, "You can't bring there here and not expect here to become there." And without a sovereign border, Mark, what are we going to turn the U.S. into? The United States, what are we going to turn it into?
Hey, and you see what's going on with migration from state to state. No one really talks about this.
That's a great
right?
point.
So people move from left-leaning states, and they move to places like Texas, and they move to places like Georgia, and they move to places like Florida, and they think, I don't want what my life has become in the state that I'm leaving, but they bring their ideology to the new state, and that's why these votes are getting closer and closer and closer. That's why it's so important as Republicans, as conservatives, that we look at this next election, which truly, I mean, we hear it every time, right? But this really, to me, this is a watershed election. If we don't do a good job of taking back the House, Donald Trump is likely to win. Most people would agree with that, right?
I think
If he does and he doesn't have the House, he's going to legislate through executive order, and the courts will do everything in their power to block that legislation for the betterment of the people. So this is why I think, and I have donors all over the country. I'm very fortunate because I've lived different parts of the country in various pursuits of my career, and they all get it. They all get it. They say, hey, Mark, God bless you, because we need someone like you there more now than ever. And I can't vote for you, but you know what? I can donate to your cause, and every little bit helps. I have very small donors, and I have some larger donors as well, which I'm equally grateful for all of them. And I will tell you, Mark, Congress2020.com, right? Mark, Congress2020.com. You can hit the donate button.
Donate.
You can read the issues, watch the video. You can do all of that and learn about this campaign because this message is resonating for the folks. They get it. Deficits in spending, a broken healthcare system, and a border that is now like a 7-Eleven, open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah, and Mark, I'll speak about this constantly, and I am of Mexican descent, and I will be the first to go down and put a nail in that wall. I mean, we have to secure this border, and in order to keep this country the bastion of freedom, the bastion of liberty. If we lose the United States, there's nowhere else to go. There's a reason everybody wants to get here, and we've got to keep this light of freedom and liberty growing. So I know you've got a thought, but hang on right there because we got to go take a break. This is going to be a short break, and we'll be right back, folks. You listen to America's Web Radio. This is On Point with Victor.
This is David Donaldson with the Atlanta Healing Center, conveniently located in Lawrenceville, Georgia. At AHC, your success is our goal. Addiction recovery is about more than just not using. It's about becoming a whole person and addressing all aspects of your physical, psychological, and social needs. Please call us at 770-696-9862, or you can reach us on the web at www.atlantahealingcenter.com.
Whether cruising the strip in a 57 Chevy or taking the family on a vacation in a 71 Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser, you need to tune in to Classic Cars with Steve Ronaldo and Jim Weber every Saturday from 8 to 9 a.m. on americaswebradio.com.
Your auto love and investment demands the best, and for 45 years, Passport Transport has been meeting those demands. From manufacturers to the one-car collectors and all other facets of the auto industry and antique auto hobby. The first and the finest with unequaled service and peace of mind. Passport Transport, your auto transportation company. Contact PassportTransport.com with your need today. Passport Transport.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Into this discussion. So you're listening to America's Web Radio, by the way. Email is victor@americaswebradio.com, victor@americaswebradio.com.
You wanted me to finish that thought, right? So
yeah.
Absent secure borders, we can't enforce the immigration laws we pass. So what's the point of passing immigration reform if we're not going to enforce it?
Right.
It's all a
well, it's a sham. If you look, Mark, I've talked about this on my show constantly. If you look at the way the Democrat Party operates, which I refer to a lot of times as the Hippocrat Party, and you look at the way establishment Republicans operate, they don't, the truth be told, they don't want to solve, especially the Democrat Party of today, they don't want to solve an issue. If we solved immigration, how are they going to buy votes? How are they going to scare you into voting? If we solve these, so Washington's all about kicking the can down the road.
Hey, I talk about leadership in public, right? So that's a word that's kicked around a lot in politics. To me, leadership is more than talking about a problem. Leadership is doing something about the problem.
Right.
Leadership is being able to have the courage to say no to special interests when their interests, Victor, are not in the best interest of our nation.
Of the nation and of the people who reside in it.
Right. So it's time, right? We roll up our sleeves. It's time we tackle these tough problems so that we can deliver the true promise of America to our next generation. That's what this fight is about.
And look, despite what the Democrats and the Socialist Democrat Party will tell you, America doesn't see color. The American dream didn't look at my father and go, "You're brown, you can't have the American dream." When my father came here, when I grew up as a kid, my father constantly talked about getting his United States citizenship. That was his goal. And he always told us, and my brothers and my sisters, it does not matter how tall you are, the color of your skin, nothing of that matters because you were lucky enough to be born in the United States. And that's the message I think we've got to get back, including getting into, like, for instance, you're going to be campaigning in Forsyth and Gwinnett.
Yes.
Getting in touch and making that bond, form that bond with the constituents so that you're beholden to the constituents and not special interests.
The 4th of July parade up in Forsyth was a great example of that. I walked the side of the road and I introduced myself to, I don't know, Victor, 1,000, 1,200 handshakes later.
Wow.
Right? And you watch the news and you really feel like the country is very far off course. Then you do something like that and you realize just how many well-meaning people are in America from all sorts of walks of life. And I don't know, did you see that little clip today of the two toddlers, the two-year-olds, right? One is a black toddler, the other is a white toddler, and they see each other on the sidewalk, and they just run as fast as they can and give themselves a big, giant embrace. And I'm thinking to myself, it takes a 2-year-old to give the rest of us a learning moment. God bless those toddlers.
Wow.
It was you should take a look at it. It'll warm your heart, honestly.
Yeah,
It'll warm your heart.
I'm going to look that up. So I just had a listener chime in. He's in Gwinnett County.
Great.
And he said, so far you sound like someone he could vote for. So that's good news for you.
Thank you.
But he did make a good comment. He said, isn't it odd that free turns out to be expensive.
Exactly. You don't get 22 trillion in debt by paying your way. The problem is we're now saying, do as I say, not as I do in Washington. And it's trickled down to families all over this country. A metric that bothers me to no end is we have 60+% of American families today that do not have $1,000 of disposable cash for an emergency. Think about that. The car breaks down, the air conditioner goes out, the refrigerator goes on the fridge.
Or God forbid, a medical issue.
A medical issue, even worse. This, to me, there's a price to pay for all of this free. We all know that. Deep down, we know that, right?
Yeah.
You grew up in a great household. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a great household with loving parents, and I count my blessings every day for that. But they taught us right and wrong.
Yeah.
We
Exactly.
all know what's right and wrong, but we've morphed it into legal and illegal, right? I remember watching Clinton looking into the camera. It depends on what the definition of is.
What is,
right?
Yeah.
That to me was a watershed moment in American politics.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we definitely, you know, let's put it this way. Make America Great Again shouldn't be a topic of it shouldn't be a bad thing.
Exactly.
Hearing that phrase should make people stand up with pride going, America should be great. I mean, it is greatness that brought us to this point. And when I say greatness, it's because of what that document, our founding document, truly enables to happen in this country. There would be no iPhones. There would be all of the things that the left enjoy using. We wouldn't have under socialism.
Right. Exactly.
So I think as we head into 2020, there's just so many issues that are going to be thrown your way. One of them, I think, also, which is Governor Kemp has been tackling this. I think kudos to him. Is education.
Yes.
So tell the voters, Mark, what's your view on education and where can we go? How can we make it better? Because we're hearing all about this student loan crisis, which to me is a crisis created by the government, and now the government wants to run in and say, well, now we can save it or solve it when they don't really want to solve it. So let's talk just real quick.
As I mentioned earlier, my father graduated the Naval Academy, and he went into teaching. College professor, engineering was his world.
Wow.
And he spent 40-some-odd years at the same university, took a couple leaves of absences. As a matter of fact, I lived in Saudi Arabia for a couple of years, believe it or not. That was quite an experience.
I bet.
Algeria, so different parts around the world, which gives you a perspective, I would say, that might be different than those that don't get a chance to spend serious time, not just a tourist, maybe going to an international destination. Living in that house with my father, who was a very, very studious man, he would constantly tell me, Mark, I really feel half the students shouldn't be here. They're going to walk out with a degree that they're not going to use, right?
Basket weaving,
Their
climate
parents
change.
would have invested money that they may not even have had for the child to go to school, and they're going to be much further behind by going to college than if they took on something that was an interest of theirs, right? So a vocational school was something my father believed in very strongly.
Yeah.
He also believed in, although he was at a university, he believed in community college as well as an incubator. There's some very interesting things. You look at our high school system, right? And you think about what we invest. Gwinnett County, I believe it's $2.1 billion.
Yeah, it's
an
astounding.
astronomical number. And at 2 or 3 o'clock, crickets.
Yeah.
So we've got these assets that we're not using fully. How about if we started to provide programming for children who were debating whether they should pursue college, or maybe parents that were trying to direct the child in a certain way? Imagine if they could take classes after school that were college credit classes, and they could actually find out, hey, is this something that's right for me, or you know what, is it not? I think that we would see the cost of education, as we would say in accounting, right? We want those curves to bend down and to the right on the chart.
Yeah.
That would make a significant difference, and it's become a runaway train. We think that medicine and healthcare has skyrocketed. Actually, education has even grown faster.
And my problem with that is, look at the results we're getting. We're pumping out kids who can't read at an 8th grade level, and they're graduating and going into college, or and they don't know any history, any civics of this country.
Right.
But my problem, Mark, and let me know where you stand with this. I would like to see the Department of Education shut down.
I agree.
Shut
first
down.
of all, it should be a state issue, and states historically, right? I look at it again, maybe more as an accountant, right? I like it. I like looking at budgets from a line item.
Well, you're a numbers guy,
right? I don't want to just say, "Oh, we're just going to increase that budget another 5, 10, 15%." What I would do is I would look at it from the perspective of, do we need the line item? And if so, are we already over budgeting? Do we have it just right? Or are we under budgeting? But in Washington, it's always a money grab. Always a money grab. So, Department of Education. I'm a results guy. Just show me the results. We went from being the #1 educational system in the world to now we're 30-something on the world stage. Think about this. Can you name 30 westernized countries off the top of your head? Think about that. You're going to have trouble coming up with 30 countries.
Absolutely.
They're all ahead of us.
They're all ahead of us.
Right. So we need to do away with the Department of Education. I understand it's a small sliver as far as reducing
but it's
the budget.
It's a step in the right direction.
It's a step in the right direction, and we would put the power of incubation, right? Instead of Common Core, we bring it at the state level, where now the states come up with something that's innovative, that allows a child to accelerate. And with those proven results, now it can sprinkle out. And we don't know what state is going to produce the nugget of gold.
Exactly.
Right?
Right.
But controlling it all from Washington, we're
worse.
What we are is producing nuggets of coal, not gold.
You're right. And that's my whole problem with education. It's not just a budget thing, but it's a indoctrination thing. Because the federal government should have no business educating the children. It should be by the states, like you said. So I agree with you 100%. Because the only people that should be on the ground educating kids today should come from the parents and the local districts. Because I venture to say, you do that, just like you said, innovation is going to take its, because competition is going to be introduced, innovation is going to be introduced, kids are going to learn. And I venture to say, if a child is smart in Georgia, they'll be smart in Texas. If they're smart in Texas, they'll be smart in Massachusetts.
Exactly.
So Mark, real quick, 30 seconds.
Sure.
Give us a little synopsis on why to vote for you.
Very simple. If you care about debt, deficits, and spending, a healthcare system that's broken and is in desperate need of transparency, and a border that needs to be secure, then I would highly recommend, please go over to markcongress2020.com. Read about the issues. See me speak on these issues. Donate if you feel compelled. Every bit helps. So thanks, Victor, to you for giving me the opportunity to spend time with your audience
Mark.
Today. It was a great deal of fun. We could have gone, for another few
absolutely,
hours, right?
Absolutely.
No,
well,
will you have me back at least? Have me back.
Absolutely.
May 19th.
We will.
May 19th is a long time away.
All right. Well, we appreciate it. We'll do that. Folks, I got to leave it right there. You've been listening to On Point with Victor. This is America's Web Radio.
This is Ron Camacho, host of the Business Hour, on Fridays from 10 to 11 a.m. Join me as I talk with passionate professionals on a program that profiles the best businesses, business practices, and fascinating business professionals to get an insider view of how America works.